A New Hope, Nier Chapter 147 Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. The Tree Sentinel. A great knight with a storied past during the glory days of Elden Ring in the days of the Golden Order. He had slain dragons, laid low great mages, and even seen the great and terrible vistas as he marched with Marika and Godfrey to wipe out the giants in the Atlus Platue. An ear-popping massive lightning bolt from the sky slammed down mercilessly onto the horse-mounted knight, and then using a gap I teleported onto the back of the horse, and then without giving the stunned knight a chance to stop their twitching, I stabbed directly into the exposed crack in his armor between the chest plate and helmet, with my sword cracking through his spinal cord in his neck before I ripped the sword back and forth to take off his head. A loud thudding noise rang out as the heavily armored forms of the knight and the horse collapsed to the ground. A2 also killed the horse as I killed the knight at the same time, and I squirmed slightly, feeling the runes filling my body before I exhaled and spoke up. Let's go directly kill one of the insane demigods, alright. A2 nodding with her, swinging her sword to clear the blackened blood off as she spoke idly. You have any plans to collect the magic in this world? That shield that diverted a bunch of your lightning is kinda interesting, she noted with her head tilting to the massive shield that actually shrunk as I picked it up. I hummed before shaking my head as with a small smile, but then said with a grin. The enchantment that absorbs foreign mana is pretty interesting. I bet White would love to get the enchantment so we can translate it to absorbing magical and maybe even just energy-based attacks. I mean, imagine placing this enchantment all over a ship and all of a sudden during a space battle the ship becomes a disco of doom, shooting absorbed laser and plasma attacks everywhere. Honestly, such an enchantment could be a turning point in the Halo universe, as I was well aware that White wasn't willing to give up a human planet to the Covenant, so it was inevitable for war to be had there. I shivered as a dull distant roar rang out in the distance, and looking over at the source, I saw a shadow of a massive dragon flying around before gently flying down to the ground. Yup, dragons are everywhere in Elden Ring as well. I thought as I remembered how people in this setting could take dragon blood and hearts to shrines around the world to learn dragon-based spells that could corrupt you into a lesser dragon or WRYM. Either way, I shook my head as I answered another part of A2's words. I can learn this world's magic after we establish ourselves. Now let's go pay the local insane demigod a visit, I said with a shudder as I thought about just how fucknuts insane Godric the Grafted was. And just to spend the time as I lifted a large boulder out of the ground for us to comfortably fly upon toward Stormvale Castle, I filled A2 in on the demigod we were going to kill. Godric the Grafted is the demigod we are after. He holds the shard of the Elden Ring, which controls the domains of joining, which boosts his biological grafting abilities to great heights. I explained, and A2 nodded along in understanding. So he has grafted on monster limbs onto himself or something? She asked without too much expression, but I had to cut her off as I explained what Tarnished was. Basically, in being a race of humans that would endlessly revive after death to keep trying to kill the mad demigods in hopes of bringing the Elden Ring back together and restoring the ruined world of the lands between. Once she understood what Tarnished were, she knew what I was getting at as she made a sound of disgust. That man is using Tarnished as his grafting materials, right? I silently nodded, and that was a kicker. The weakest of the demigods was the most dangerous to Tarnished, who would be working to kill the demigods. The Tarnished that Godric grafted onto his body lost portions of their souls and strength to Godric whenever he fused their remains into his body. Those soul remnants drove both himself and the Tarnished he used as grafting materials utterly insane. To say nothing of how he was a demigod with a pitifully weak bloodline from Marika's line, so he wasn't even that good of a host for a shard of the Elden Ring. The world of Elden Ring was a great deal larger than the game made it out to be, but it wasn't anything too extreme with the fact that we could fly at high speeds, and the large Stormvale Castle built atop the tallest mountain here in Limgrave made it an easy target to fly at high speeds towards. My only issue was the heavy winds and bits of lightning targeting our forms in the air as we flew towards Godric, but with my elemental magic it was still not as much of an issue, so without much fanfare we made our way over the keep of his castle, and A2 using her android eyes found Godric, who was working on his grafting within one of the open courtyards. Alright, time to kill a demigod, I thought with a wry grin as I wondered if I should take this speed run to take over Elden Ring slower. Actually, where the hell was the projection of Margit/Morgoth? I thought humorously as I looked around to see if I could find him. But with no cursed monster projection here to extinguish the flames of my ambitions, I opened a gap below us and I sent the boulder we rode in on down at high speeds at Godric through the portal gap. With the boulder smashing into Godric the Grafted with a mighty crashing noise as the large boulder smashed directly into his side and sent him flying with its great momentum. With A2 and I falling into the portal which closed behind us, we skidded across the ground in front of the howling demigod. Miscreant rats! Not even fit to be tarnished to be grafted upon my flesh, I shall make you too rue the day you were born. He howled madly as he wrenched his massive axe out of the ground as he began charging toward us.